Good morning. My name is Farrokh Mistree, and today is the 25th of September, and I'm delighted on behalf of the World's Artistic Chamber of Commerce and the Zoroastrian Faculty Network to invite you to this very special spotlight. The mantra for the World's Zoroastrian Chamber of Commerce is entrepreneurship is the pursuit of happiness, pursuit of opportunity beyond resources controlled. Today we are going to spotlight two luminaries in the Zoroastrian community, Renton Mehta and Mira Mehta. They are not related. They have the same name. And here in this spotlight, we are spotlighting a person from the older generation, that is Ruyintan, and the younger generation, that is Mira. And what they represent is first learn, emphasis on education, then make money, not just for themselves, but to improve the quality of life for others. Karishma Koka will be the synthesizer. And then we have dialogue initiators. This is the younger generation, Farzeen Abari, Zain Pitawala, and Vispi Karkaria. We will be putting in an attendance sheet in the chat, so please fill that up so we know how to get in touch with you, and we welcome your comments about as to what you would like to hear from us and what you would like to be doing. The plan for the spotlight today is as follows. There will be an opening by Percy Masters for 5 minutes. I'm giving you I will say a few words, which I'm saying right now. And then there's a commentary by Renton Mehta and Mira Mehta for 20 minutes each. Karishma will spotlight these two folks. And then questions of the panelists from three Zarathustra youth. Questions from participants and answers by the panelists. Please put your questions in the chat. And then there'll be closing remarks. We hope to be done within 90 minutes. So Percy, I invite you now to give the opening remarks.
Thank you, Farrokh. I welcome everyone to today's WZCC Spotlight, which is being brought to you in form of interviews and experiences of our successful Zarathustri entrepreneurs and professionals. Learning is a continuous process for all of us, not only for youngsters, but even for us seniors. There is a series of such spotlights being planned on intellectual, economic, and social objectives. Our forefathers always believed in the Zoroastrian principle of good thoughts, good words, and good deeds. They never ever wavered from this principle. If you go back in history, just 1392 years back from this time we landed in India, we have steadfastly followed this approach. We have created enterprises with the sole objectives of giving back to society, creating welfare projects like hospitals, education institutions, research institutions, housing for communities, and so many other things. Today, India and the world recognizes the philanthropy spirit of our community. We were the first to give our employees and their friends free medical cover, education, and all the other facilities which are being done today. Even CSR, which is being just introduced in most of the companies, was planned by the Tatas way back almost 100 years. Why I'm telling you all this is for our youngsters to understand the rich heritage our forefathers have left us. We should all work together to maintain that heritage and to go forward. We all agree our future is with our youngsters. We have to give them proper support, mentoring, encouragement, put them in very responsible positions so that they are able to take decisions. The responsibility lies with our parents who should always try to encourage the youngsters when they are having maybe sitting around a dining table and having some conversation. They should bring back the history of our community and encourage the youngsters to take it forward. All these things is very important on the young minds of our youth, because they are definitely the future of our community. Today, we would also like to welcome Ruyintan Mehta and Mira Mehta, hear from them their achievements and experiences as social entrepreneurs. Accumulation of wealth has no meaning if it is not used for a better purpose. We have realized that we come empty-handed in this world and also leave this world empty-handed. It is therefore very important that the wealth that we have accumulated is put to better use. And this can only be done by doing charitable activities and giving back to the community and encouraging everybody to do better in their lives. We will be also keenly hearing our young dialogue initiators Farzeen, Zian, and Vispi. We look forward to their interaction. We greatly appreciate the efforts put in by Farrokh Mistree, our moderator, and of course, Karishma Koka for her very valuable input as we go along. My best wishes to all of you who are attending this spotlight. Enjoy the show. Thank you.
Thank you, Percy. So what are we about? The World Zarathustra Chamber of Commerce, in partnership with Zarathustra faculty and academia, envision empowering Zarathustra students to learn how to create economic, cultural, and intellectual value. The mission of the Zoroastrian Faculty Network is to facilitate Zarathustra youth through higher and specialized education to pursue careers in industry, government, and academia as business entrepreneurs, social entrepreneurs, and knowledge entrepreneurs. We have a monthly webinar series, and these are designed to be conversations to help Zarathustra youth with support of their parents to attain higher and specialized education. The World Zoroastrian Chamber of Commerce ZFN Spotlights, our aim here is to spotlight luminaries from the Zarathustra community who are role models for Zarathustra youth to emulate as they strive to maximize the nexus between economic value, social value, and intellectual value. And it is my pleasure now to invite Ruyintan to introduce himself. And he is one of our luminaries that we would like to hold up for the community to emulate. Ruyintan?
Thank you, Farrokh. I'm Renton Mehta, and most people ask me, who are you? So I basically say, I'll be almost 74 years old. I was born and raised in Ahmedabad in India. And currently I consider myself as a full-time bum with a passion to help others. So that to me is a definition of a social entrepreneur at this stage of my life. I was a fairly good student, studied at St. Xavier's High School in Ahmedabad. And after that, I was fortunate enough to clear the dreaded joint entrance exam for IITs and got admitted to IIT Bombay. Graduated in chemical engineering with a BTech in 1970, and like it was in my time, came to the US, got a couple of master's degrees in chemical engineering and engineering administration. I worked the first half, almost the first third of my life working for others. And then the bug of entrepreneurship got in. So for the last 26, 27 years of my career, I had my own plastic manufacturing companies. I sold the last one in 2013. And since that time, I've been involved pretty much full time in essentially working for nonprofits in India and supporting them. I currently am the president of Wheels India Niswarth Foundation in the US, serve as the president of IIT Gandhinagar Foundation here in the US, and I was a past president of my alma maters and nonprofit in the US called IIT Bombay Heritage Foundation. Personally, I have an extremely strong passion to give back to the country I love, and in particularly in areas of interest that I have. in the areas of water, maternal and child health, and higher technical education, and recently in the last couple of years, also in primary education. So like I mentioned earlier, I consider myself as a social entrepreneur. Next slide, Farrokh. I was born in a very middle class, but an extremely conservative Parsi family in Ahmedabad. My mother was my role model in many ways. She was the one who lovingly carried the stick. My father was a very mild and a very gentle person, but my mother instilled strong values that you should always excel in whatever you do. As a result, taking that lesson, I did extremely well in school and later on academically in life. There was a very strong emphasis on education, at the same time on giving back to society. My mother was like the host family for a whole bunch of blind school students in Ahmedabad who used to come and stay at our house on the weekends. I learned entrepreneurship in some ways as part of our Zoroastrian DNA. Always had the bug that one should really work for yourself, which is what I was fortunate enough to achieve. I mentioned earlier about my education, and I won't dwell on it. My earlier part, I worked for others. One particular fine day in 1988, I told this multinational company's president of our division to get lost and basically started my own company to make widgets. So I was in plastic blow molding and essentially made widgets. To give you a comparison, the division that I was a general manager of, our projects were so large that we never worried about the last 3 zeros. And I'm sorry, that's correct. Whereas when I started my company, I only worried about those last 3 zeros. That gives you a difference in scale. I was a serial entrepreneur, having started 6, either bought, sold, or acquired 6 different companies between a period from 1990 to 2013. We had operations in New Jersey, in Pennsylvania, 2 locations in California and North Carolina, in Kentucky, and an operation in Canada. Over these years, we hired well over 1,000 people, and I strongly believed that employees should have all the facilities that they could to help them and help the community in which we operated. I strongly also believed in sharing wealth with our employees. One of the examples was, which was actually something I learned at Zagni, we started a critical assistance fund to have our employees give a loan to them to the extent of about $500 without any questions, so that essentially they could not have an excuse that their car broke down and they didn't have money to fix it, because we operated our plants 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and presence of these employees was extremely important even for our financial well-being. Having sold my last company in 2013, I have been intensely involved in nonprofit activities in India, and I plan to give away a substantial portion of my wealth to benefit communities in India. My children are extremely well settled. They are both specialist physicians, like my wife, and they certainly don't need all the net worth that we have created. My professional role models that I consider and revere are people like Jamsetji Tata and Andrew Carnegie. Of course, the original role model in my family will and always will be my dear mom. Some of the nonprofits that I'm heavily involved in are listed here. Akanksha, which was founded by a Parsi lady called Shaheen Mistree quite some time ago, and has been strongly supported by people from Thermax, Anu Aga, and Mayor Padamji. I serve on the US board. I'm also on the board of advisors of Dakshana Foundation, which trains extremely bright students who come from very poor backgrounds to take the joint entrance exams for IIT and for the medical college admission test. And we have a 71% average acceptance rate, whereas the average acceptance rate for others is less than 2%. IIT Bombay and IIT Gandhinagar are also in my thoughts and in my contributions. So basically, can we go on to the next slide, please? This is a snapshot, thanks to Farrokh. We put together a collage of the kind of activities that we do. So very quick one on that. On the left-hand top side, we are working in Kutch in conjunction with Tata Power CSR Group and it's an NGO called Arid Communities and Technologies. And we have converted defunct bore wells into recharge wells so that we can improve the water table, bring it up a little bit when it rains for only 1 month a year, and also reduce the total dissolved solids. What brings me happiness is like what you see in the middle picture. This is a school that we support, and little children get pretty excited about what's going on. On the right-hand top corner, we have supported innovations in the field of maternal health. A lot of women have what is called as a typically anemia. And we have supported the use of a non-invasive hemoglobin reading device, which is pretty unique. And it's not even used here in the US, but we successfully used it to trend the hemoglobin levels for thousands of women. On the left-hand bottom side is a rickshaw that we helped build for segregating various kinds of waste in a small village in Ahmedabad district. In the middle again is a program that we have been heavily involved in called Participatory Groundwater Management in Kutch, which sort of improves the water table and reduces the TDS level. And on the right bottom side, we worked in a village called Tamliar, about 5 kilometers from the Pakistan border in Rajasthan, where this village had no water for well over 20 years, and water was trucked in by a trailer, tanker trailer. We dug 1,000 feet down bore well, and we were able to get pure water by hitting an aquifer. And they celebrated in July as if like it was Diwali. Next slide, please. So in terms of creating social value, the wheel stands for water, health, energy, education, rural livelihoods, and sustainability. And technology-enabled philanthropy is the motto of the NGO and the side subsidiary called WIN Foundation that we have created. My interest is in giving back to the country of my birth, and I intend to give at least 50% of my net worth by supporting young entrepreneurs with seed funding. One of the other programs that I have not mentioned is called Maker Bhavan Foundation, where we build tinkerers labs. We create a program called Invention Factory, and so on and so forth. And also in projects which have reasonably good chance of success to create water-related business. My tips for young Zoroastrians and others is philanthropy is in the DNA of us Zoroastrians. Good thoughts, good words, and good deeds is the concept that I follow. I am a very secular person and I don't really carry our religion on our sleeve, but in a quiet way, I believe I practice by doing what has been mentioned by Zarathustra. Giving back can start at any age. It doesn't matter how small your contribution is. Join any society or organization in your schools and colleges where you are studying, and have a passion and not worry about what financial motive it will drive you. So that is in a nutshell my story. And I'm very glad that I had the opportunity to talk to you folks. Thank you very much.
Mira?
Great. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everybody who's joining in for this. It's a pleasure to be here with the group today. My name is Mira Mehta. No relation to Ruyintan, but the Zoroastrians probably are all related somehow. I live in Kaduna, Nigeria. That's where I'm dialing in from. If I have a problem with my network, I will try and reconnect, just so that sometimes, things don't always work out exactly the way you think they will. So just as an FYI, I was born in Cambridge, Massachusetts, to a Indian Zoroastrian dad and a Finnish Lutheran mom. And growing up, I actually was raised in a Hindu temple, in a Vedanta temple that really focused a lot on the concept of one truth with many paths. And so while I had my Navjot ceremony and we celebrated Christmas, every year at home, really for me, what I always was looking for was the ways that things that look different on the surface actually have similarities underneath. As a child, I also, similar to Ruyintan, grew up in a household where strong excellence in academics was understood to be the goal. I don't think my parents ever told me to bring home straight A's, but I kind of knew that I was supposed to. I did very well in school. I was an extremely competitive person. I'm a younger sister. I always wanted to do whatever my brother was doing, and outshine him any chance that I could. And I took that energy with me into school. But it wasn't until high school that I really tried to put my competitive hand into athletics. And I started coxing, which is the person who steers the boat on a rowing team. Being competitive in athletics as well as academics was super huge for me. That actually was what propelled me to enter Brown University, because Brown at the time had one of the top rowing programs in the nation. And what I loved about competing as a team was that, we had this phrase, right? You don't want to be in the fast boat, you want to make your boat fast. And so wherever you end up getting placed, right, make the best out of that situation. Whatever girls I'm competing with, if I think, oh, those are the varsity girls, I want to be placed with them. No, the answer is, here I am. We're all here together. How do we make the best out of the skills that we have as a group? And so, somebody who wanted to be the best in everything I did, be the best academically, be the best athletically, when I was applying to jobs at the end of university, all my, athletic friends were applying into, banking jobs and finance jobs. And I didn't have any background in that. My major had been public health. But I felt that I was smarter than, or at least as smart as my friends that were pursuing these, top jobs. And, why couldn't I go for that as well? I landed a job at BlackRock, which is a large asset management company. And then it was really there that I had what I would call the first turning point in my career. Up until that point, I had really just focused on be the best, do the best, win for the sake of winning, but not necessarily looking at was winning making me happy, or was the direction in which I was projecting myself actually the direction that I wanted to go in. And so in 2007, I went on a trip to Africa. I went to Kenya for the first time in my life and went on a safari and went on this beach vacation. And there were about 25, young kids in finance who were making, lots of money, more money than we had ever made before in our lives, and could spend on whatever we wanted to spend. And my friends decided to spend one day in an orphanage. And so we went to this orphanage, and we had been deep sea fishing and seeing lions and going in a plane across the Serengeti. And we go to this orphanage and we're giving out BlackRock pens, and maybe we had a couple of t-shirts. And something just clicked inside me. I thought to myself, you know what? All of these kids are here because they were orphaned by HIV. I have a degree in public health. Why am I here giving these kids pens? Couldn't I be doing something more? And this feeling that I actually think I want to do something different. So we can that transition, right? I moved from BlackRock to the Clinton Health Access Initiative. And at the Clinton Health Access Initiative, I was posted to Nigeria. I had only ever been to Kenya that one time. I had no idea what Nigeria was really like or about. But I moved here with enthusiasm, and very quickly I realized that I could have more of an impact and get closer to sort of this concept of helping people, you know, and doing good in the world. Because for me, you know, I really feel that, you know, just because I've been born in a certain part of the world, or I've been born into a certain, you know, middle-class family that was able to support me, that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm entitled to things that somebody else who was born somewhere else is not entitled to. And I felt that, you know, I wanted to find a way to give back and to create opportunities for, you know, people who might not have been born into the circumstances that I was born into, and who might not have had the support, you know, that I had. So at the Clinton Foundation, I worked in HIV/AIDS. I spent 4 years there, and I really started to have another turning point where I felt like, okay, you know, it's great that we're doing all this work. We were doing a lot of work with HIV drugs and trying to make sure that every health clinic in Nigeria had the drugs that people needed. But I felt like, you know, maybe the drugs are free, but everybody that's coming to these clinics is paying a price to get here. And, you know, they might be having to make really difficult decisions. Maybe you're choosing between, you know, do I have enough money to pay for my kids' school fees next year? Extra income, making this commute 3 hours to, you know, a hospital that might be able to sell, you know, to provide me with the drugs that I need, you know. And so I felt like, while it was important for, what I wanted to do was solve the problem of, you know, this person needs more money in their pocket to be able to make these choices. And to me, economic agency, the resources to choose their own destiny and to have their own free will, was what was going to make me feel more impactful and feel like I was making a difference more. Really, what I actually want to do is I want to be an employer. My dad was an entrepreneur. We can actually move to the next slide. My dad had been an entrepreneur since I was 4 years old. He and Ruyintan actually. Let's go forward and we'll come back to this slide. Sorry, I put them in the wrong order. So, you know, my dad had started a company when I was 4 years old. I had lived through the ups and downs of entrepreneurship through the lens of a child. And I thought to myself, I think I can do this as an entrepreneur, but I actually don't have all the skills that I need. You know, I don't really, you know, even though I worked at a bank, I don't feel like I have a strong enough understanding of accounting. I don't feel like I have a strong enough understanding of how to actually raise money, because I know I can't do this. I decided I wanted to go back to school. So that was the point at which I went to Harvard Business School to gain sort of a network and additional skills that I didn't feel that I had, or didn't feel confident enough to launch my own business. So after having, you know, taken my first job, gained a lot of skills at that job, but not necessarily felt happy, taken a second job, learned more about myself and what drove me and what made me feel personally fulfilled. Then I went back to school to gain sort of the skills that I felt I was missing, so that I could then finally in 2014 launch my company, Tomato Joss. And so what is Tomato Joss? Well, Tomato Joss is a social enterprise. It is a company that has a farming business, a food processing business, and packaged consumer goods. So we work with smallholder invited into our land that we have developed for irrigation, and in the rainy season they farm maize, and at the end of the season they pay us back for the that they have produced. So they pay us back in tomatoes, and once they have finished paying off their loan at a fixed price. So the farmers through our program have actually been able to make massive increases in their yields. They are now able to get about 40 tons per hectare instead of 5 tons per hectare. What does that do for us? That enables us to buy and source tomatoes, which are very, very perishable, and turn them into tomato paste and packaged tomato food products that we sell in Nigeria. And Nigeria is a top consumer of tomato. Tomato is a very, very big ingredient in a lot of Nigerian cuisine. And packaged tomato is a very, very popular ingredient that is used to cook these dishes. So we work with these farmers. If we go back to the previous slide, I can walk you through a little bit of our operations and what they look like. So the first picture here on the left is what my office and my bedroom looked like when I first moved back to Nigeria in 2014. It was very, very rural. It was very rustic. All of the money that I had raised was really going into developing the farming system, this idea of how we can get farmers to grow tomatoes at the right yield and at the right cost to make processing actually make sense. The middle picture on the top row shows what farmers typically do in Nigeria when they're farming without additional support. The right side picture shows what we call the Tomato Joss model farm, which is the farm that has better irrigation services. As you can see, the tractors have actually created the beds. The lines are much more straight, and the plants are able to grow in a much, much more organized environment, which allows them to have much higher yields. So, farmers in our program typically increase their incomes by, 400%, 500%. And that money goes directly into their families and directly into their communities, right? And at the end of the day, we then use those tomatoes, if you see in the lower middle picture, to make our tomato paste. So if you look down there at the sort of right side of that middle picture, you can see probably, close to 1,000 tons of tomatoes, or close to 100 tons of tomatoes sitting there on that floor, ready to go into our factory. A lot of entrepreneurship is about resilience and ups and downs. I don't think, Ruyintan made it sound easy, but it's not easy, for him to have said goodbye to his, manager and started his own business is a huge leap of faith. And for me, it was the same thing. And I actually didn't really want to do this talk today because I've been battling, every new step in this company, there's a new battle that I have to face. In 2020, that battle was how to build a factory during COVID, during a global shutdown, when supply chains were disrupted and, the entire country was on lockdown, and I wasn't even in Nigeria for probably 6 months of the year. The challenge I'm facing today is, we spent 8 years figuring out how to farm, figuring out how to build a factory, processing tomatoes in that factory. We don't know how to sell our product. So, we're now in a position where my investors are expecting me to show these returns. And, for the month of September, we're only at 5% of our monthly sales target, and it's September 25th. So, figuring out how we're going to pay salaries, figuring out, now we're sitting on this massive pile of finished goods inventory. And what are we going to do? And how do I support the sales team? How do I build a sales team? We've never had a sales team. Every time we take a new step forward, we find a new challenge. But along the way, on the lower right-hand side picture, we do find ways to celebrate. And I think the things that make me happy are similar to the things that make Ruyintan happy. Supporting a local school. The farmers that work with us have had a school in their community that has been run down for the past 20 years. And, we finally worked with a few high net worth individuals from the community to refurbish the schools, put in new desks, get the kids uniforms. And, the community leaders were actually very, very encouraging. They encouraged all of the, farmers and members of our community to send their kids to school because everybody does see education as something that's really important for the next generation. So, that kind of helps me to feel more buoyant when the challenges of running this business start to try and pull me down. We can go on to the last slide now. So, in terms of, go one forward, in terms of sort of what I think of as creating social value, again, for me, a lot of this is about creating agency, right? I feel like a lot of aid programs are paternalistic. It's who am I to decide what it is that you need as an individual, right? I would rather provide opportunities and provide agency and provide economic, capabilities so that people can make their own choices about what they think will make their lives better. And so, Tomato Joss, I like to say, is a different kind of company, and we work with our farmers in a different kind of way. So what does that mean? Well, this is a company that has tied its profitability to the profitability of its constituents. We can only be successful and we can only produce a competitive product if our farmers are profitable. And so we have really linked our success to theirs. And going even one step deeper than that, I'm trying to create, and I don't always succeed, in building a company that has a culture where it's okay to ask questions. It's okay for managers not to know the answers. It's okay for people to ask questions to their superiors about what to do, and how to really, do something different. I get the most energy when I see my farmers succeeding and when I see my employees and my colleagues actually, catching hold, and when I can serve as a catalyst for my passion to be expanded, beyond just me. My tips for young Zoroastrians, and I think of young people as like below 20, but I guess young can be any age, we're all young. I think staying curious is really important. It helps you to identify opportunities. It helps you to be less judgmental. It helps you to sort of take a step back when, your emotions want to take control. And, finding your passion, right? And you can find your passion at any age. Being kind is also very important. For me, one of the things that I feel is really important is, kindness does not mean naivete, right? You can be kind without being foolish, but approaching people with kindness, I think just, creates more kindness in the world and helps everybody to, just live a better life. Finding your passion is important. Finding something that you care about, learning how to focus on something, learning how to, care very deeply about something. Those are skills that you can then apply, even if your passion changes. The way that you can learn about something and the way that you can dedicate and focus your time and efforts on that thing is a really valuable skill. And then the final point, I think academics are really important. I know there are a lot of people who have become very, very successful without necessarily having been successful in school. So I don't necessarily say you have to go and get straight A's for the sake of getting straight A's, but using the educational system that you're in to learn how to learn, so that then you can learn about other things in adulthood that might be more relevant to you. I think that's sort of, for me, one of the reasons that I have been, able to get this far. I won't say I'm successful yet. My company's not profitable yet. I don't know, how it's going to go. I'm scared all the time, and I probably cry once a week, but I believe that the people that I've come into contact with and the community that, Tomato Joss is located in is better off for, my having made this attempt. And with that, I'll turn it back over to the moderators. Thank you so much.
Karishma?
Thank you very much, Mira and Ruyintan. The World Zartushti Chamber of Commerce has the mission of promoting entrepreneurship, where entrepreneurship is the pursuit of opportunity beyond resources controlled. This is in the overlap, the maximizing of the nexus between three domains: the economic, the intellectual, and the social. And in maximizing this sweet spot, the nexus, it is guided by the Fravashi within each one of us, that element of Ahura Mazda within every creation. The sense of entrepreneurship is that it is opportunity driven. We require to identify the right opportunities. It requires shared vision, as Adel has implemented and shares with us. It is action oriented to achieve good, good being harmony, happiness for other people. It is based on a set of values, and it involves taking calculated risks so that the resources that we put in can be well utilized without waste. As we reflect in the next slide upon what the speakers have said, let us also reflect on creating value in our own journey. So with purpose and passion, that fire within the belly of each person. We are driven to first listen, observe, both to the inner voice and those around us. Then reflect with a bright intellect in order to decide what is best at this moment for growth of ourselves and others. So listen, reflect, decide. This then leads to the good action that brings about Ushta. So the concept of listen, reflect, and decide is Yasna 30.2. The concept of taking the right action is in the Gathas, but it is in the now. The word is Uchit. And Ushta, we know, is happiness and harmony. So this journey from good thought through action to achieve happiness and harmony is what our model entrepreneurs have given us. In the next slide, we'll reflect upon what Ruyintan and Mira have given us in terms of economic, intellectual, and social entrepreneurship. Intellectually, both have the common theme of the best education. Ruyintan said he devoted 1/3 of his time to education, and he got the best. And he wants to give back to the country that gave him that education, India. Mira reflects on what is needed constantly, and she seeks to identify what she does not know. She shared an example of this with us, and then seeks to fill in and look for the best knowledge in order to do the best so that other people can be benefited as the whole company grows. This concept of economic gain for all involves managing risk. Ruyintan, being a serial entrepreneur, does this almost automatically. He does all three types of growth and economic benefit for all seamlessly almost. Mira believes in economic partnerships, as does Ruyintan, so that her growth only happens when other people grow. So as knowledge has driven economic gain for all, it also has impacted the society, both the company and the greater society. So in some ways, this is seen as converting challenges into opportunities to empower other people. And Ruyintan takes care of his employees. He talked about the $500 economic fund. There are other examples of this, and one just needs to read his stories to learn how well he achieves this. Mira benefits her partners first, and once they are benefited, then the company benefits. So again, it is empowering those people to implement the best knowledge, to serve the land, to grow the produce that then makes all the partners profit. And in doing so, they both give back constantly, which, as we all know, is in the Ushtavaiti Gatha, Yasnaha 43.1. Happiness comes to one who shares with others. So as we reflect upon the Zarathushtri Daina itself, I can definitely see this, but I'm sure you can too, that all the prayers that we pray are actually in the action that Ruyintan and Mira have taken as they have become model entrepreneurs. Their action is based on righteousness that leads to harmony and happiness with a good intention and done systematically. So Ushta is happiness, harmony, and being systematic. The Yasna 30.2 allows this good intention to take action. It results in discrimination in Yasna 30.3. So we reflect upon what we observe and listen to within ourselves and outside. We then decide in order to discriminate between that which is right and the other, so that it helps us take calculated risks and manage the risks that seem to constantly appear as we move forward. The Yathahu Vairyodyahunava gives us this in a nice short formula. It says, with a good mind, Vahumana, work upon Asha to take good action that is just and that leads to happiness and growth for all. Shyotanana, so that we can share the outcome of this with those who need the Drigubhyo and develop ourselves into the Vastarem. Vastarem is a very interesting concept that captures the zeitgeist of today's world of sustainable development. It translates as the caretaker, the person who looks after the flock. And the word caretaker is the word that translates directly into the word entrepreneur. In order to do this and move forward towards Frashokereti, Fra as into progress, Asho as in Asha, righteousness, Kereti as in good action, we implement the Amesha Spentas. And we've seen this in both the journey Ruyintan has taken, as he started from the influence of his mother and moved forward, and as Mira has done, again starting with her parents and teachers and moving forward. Wisdom, together with Spentamainu, Sahura Mazda with Spentamainu, beneficent mentality, empowers us to use the good mind with order and purity, Asha, to build Bahukshattra, good strength. With benevolence and devotion, Spentar Mighty, this leads to Hurbatat, holistic perfection, which each of our model entrepreneurs seems to have achieved for themselves and others. But this is complete when it sustains through time and achieves Ameritat. And this Ameritat is within the concept of Frashokereti, which is progress for the whole world. So now if we look at the three overlapping circles on the right, where economic, intellectual, and social domains overlap, the nexus where these are maximized emerges as the emergent property of the system being sustainable development, which is the vision that Farrokh started this off with. And in the Yenge Hatam prayer, we are guided to resonate with those people of good action around the world. And through these spotlight series, we seek to do that, so that the principles of Zoroastrianism, while foundational to all good action, is applied individually and works for the whole world, like all good streams of knowledge and faiths achieve, together with good governance. Now, as we reflect upon our own journey and start the questions in the chat box to build this dialogue, we call upon you to raise your hand so that we can identify you, and then unmute yourself so that you can share your thought stream with us. And while we do that, maybe please also fill in the little attendance form created by Zian Pitawala that has been placed in the chat box. So thank you all, and over to Farrokh to take us through the dialogue. Thank you, Farrokh.
It is my pleasure to invite Farzeen Avari to introduce herself and her colleagues, and then to pose questions to our guests.
Hi, everyone. I'm Farzeen Avari. I am the co-chair for Zaina, that's a Zoroastrian high school teacher, where I teach honors chemistry and teach kids about leadership and service. Next.
Say.
Hey everyone, I'm Zayan Bithala, a student studying biochemistry at the University of Delhi.
Hi everyone, I'm Vispi Karkaria and I'm pursuing my PhD in mechanical engineering, and my research right now is focused on mechanical design and artificial intelligence. Thank you.
Farzeen? So Vispi, since Farzeen is not with us right now, perhaps you could organize the questioning. Go ahead, Vispi.
Sure. I would start the questionnaire by asking Mr. Renton to please share about the rationale for wanting to give away a major portion of your wealth, because it's a big thing and a big plus for our community.
Well, in my personal case, because continuing on to pursue excellence in education, it was more so my wife, but I think I was also a strong supporter. Our sons have excelled in the field of their choice. They are both highly specialized physicians, and are very successful like their mother. So they don't need all the money that my family, my wife and I have created. And I believe giving away too much of it to the next generation, in my humble opinion, is a mistake. We came here, there is a person who actually went to IIT Bombay with Cyrus Mehta, who is here, and me. His name is Raj Gupta. And he wrote a book called $8 and a Dream. $8 was because in the late 60s and early 70s, the Indian government would only allow us to bring $8 in foreign exchange when we left Bombay or Delhi or wherever. So that's what we started with. And what we have achieved is something quite a bit. And it is time to give away, and it gives me great pleasure in giving away. So that's one of the main reasons why I feel, because it helps others.
That's really inspiring. And on the same grounds, my second question is that now both the speakers have listened to each other and they come from two different generations. So after hearing this story, what are your takeaways?
You're asking me first?
Yes.
Okay. My takeaway is when you listen to Mira, who represents the younger generation, she has struggled and continues to struggle. Well, that is something extremely important. If you want to be an entrepreneur, believe me, you will have tears at times, whether you're a boy or a girl, because making payroll is one of the toughest things you can do. For the first 3 years, I did not take any salary. While when I chucked up my corporate jobs, I was making a very substantial 6-figure amount, and going from that to making nothing and putting in a huge amount of our family's wealth into creating something that was a dream was a struggle. So you need to be resilient. You will fail, and out of failures, you will learn. So that is what my takeaway would be.
Thank you. And we can move to Mira Mehta.
Sure. I think, I'm standing on, I see myself as standing on one side of success, and, Ruyintan is standing on the other side of success. And it's also hard for me to say Ruyintan and not Ruyintan uncle because of the respect, that I want to convey to everybody on the call. But, I think one thing that, Ruyintan has said repeatedly, and we've had a chance to get to know each other now, for probably close to a year, because we've done a few different things together at this point. But, one of the concepts that he has mentioned is you don't have to only give back at the end of your life. Charity doesn't have to start once you've succeeded, right? And, it's like a muscle memory, right? The more you practice doing it, the more you get good at it, right? To the point where he's now excited about the idea of giving away half of his wealth, right? Which is a huge, thing to do, right? But it's not that he just woke up overnight and decided to do that. This is something that, has been built into his actions and his psyche from a very young age, through the education by his mother and through the examples that he saw in his family. And so I think that's also a very, very important lesson, is that even if you don't feel like you're there yet, or you've landed, you can still extend a hand out to somebody else. And, you can still, that will make them better, and it will also make you better.
Thank you very much. That's really nice. Now, I would like to invite Farzin to continue with her questionnaires.
Sure. So my question for the speakers is, how would you describe yourself in a few words, and why?
So I'm going to take your number one question. What 2 words or a phrase describes you and why? It's very simple. For me, it's give, get. Give back to get happiness. It's as simple as that for me.
Beautiful.
For me, I think I'm going to use descriptive words, adjectives, rather than verbs, but I don't know what that means about me. I think, I would say stubborn is one. And I mean that, both in the negative and the positive, right? Stubborn is the flip side of resilient. You have to keep just hitting your head on the wall, and eventually maybe your head's going to break, or maybe the wall's going to break. And, I think the refusal to quit, right, is built into that word. And I think the other word is kindness. I really try to, step into the world with kindness every day and empathy. And I don't always succeed, but it's something that I want to do. I see it in my parents, and I see it in the people that I admire the most, is, entering the world with kindness, curiosity, humility. So, those are the things that I'm trying to be.
Looking back at your life and your career, could you share some advice for parents and the next generation of entrepreneurs?
For advice to parents would be, first of all, please make sure that your children study academically. It's extremely important that in whatever field of endeavor they choose, they try to achieve their highest potential. And only then, because it's a very competitive world, particularly in India. For example, the example I have is, I was fortunate enough to go to IIT, but I understand now almost 2 million students at grade 12, standard 12, take the exam, joint entrance exam. And ultimately it narrows down to 16,000 students out of 2 million are able to get a position at one of the 23 IITs. So that just gives you the level of competition. Unfortunately, and I'm sorry to be a critic here, during Adel, Farrokh, Cyrus and I, when we were at IIT, for example, I've done a demographic study in 1970. There were 13 of us who were Zoroastrians who graduated in a class of 300. Fast forward to 2019 or 2020, out of 800 undergraduate students who graduated from IIT Bombay, there was only one or maybe maximum 2 Zoroastrian students. So one needs to ask a question, what happened? The second thing is, in order to be an entrepreneur, you first have to have a very clear goal in your mind as to what exactly do you intend to do before you jump in. That would be my 2 penny bit advice.
Yeah, and for me, I won't echo Ruyintan. I'll try and give 2 different things, although I do agree with everything that he has said. One thing is, you learn by doing. The desk research is really important, but actually rolling up your sleeves and trying and failing and trying again, like Ruyintan said, failure is probably the best teacher out there, right? And so, the sooner you start, you're going to start to figure out what works and what doesn't work. So that's advice number 1. If you want to actually get out there and build a company, don't, depending on your life circumstances and things like that, but if you feel that it's the point to start, get out there, don't hide behind your computer, get out there and actually try. And then I think the second thing, for parents of kids is, on a similar note, right? I don't know how to do this because I don't have kids yet, but I think the idea of, giving your kids opportunities to build resilience is really important, right? It's not, I don't want to say like, don't spoil your kids, right? Everybody wants to give their kids a better life than the life that they had. And I think that's very important. But there's also, how there are ways that you can try and build into that, for your children. I think the opportunity to fail and to see that failure isn't the end of the world, right? To take it in stride, to learn how to be a good sport, win or lose, it's how you play the game. And so for me, I always encourage people to, give their kids at least exposure to athletics or music or something that's outside of academics that complements academics. Music, because it actually, changes neurological pathways in your brain and helps you to be a better student. And then competitive sports and team sports, because there is so much to learn about how to be in the world, and the importance of teamwork and the importance of working, one as many or one of many, that I think really, really helps people in life.
Thank you for sharing your ideas. I will pass it back to Farrokh.
Zain?
Doing. Yeah, involved in large projects. What is
I think I get you. What you are asking me is your question number one, if I understand you correctly. So, yes,
yes,
right. So I do actually a tremendous amount of due diligence. And when you want to gain support from others, your constituency or the people whom you are trying to attract, saying, like, why don't you donate to our group because we are doing great work? They want to know that, are you passionate? Have you really crossed all the T's and dotted all the I's? Are you deeply involved in it yourself? For example, when we started WIN Foundation, we got a single donor to give us a little over $2 million. And a couple of reasons he mentioned, which I'm almost embarrassed, was he said, I will only do it if you will have this headquartered in and around Ahmedabad, which was great for us because IIT Gandhinagar, in which I have deep contacts with them, they were a natural to be hosted there. And number two, he asked me that I want you to lead, and his last name is Patel, gentleman's name is Chirag Patel. He is a quiet billionaire, a co-founder of Amneal Pharmaceuticals. He said, I want you, Ruyintan, to lead the organization. I said, well, you have thousands of Patels in Ahmedabad and in the US. Why me? He said, I'll tell you why. Because number one, and don't take it as an insult, you are a Parsi Bawa. You are a Zoroastrian. And I trust Zoroastrians that they will take my money and treat it just like their own because they are so honest and believe in integrity. It actually embarrassed me. So I'm just telling you that integrity and honesty and deep sense in what you are actually doing is what will garner support for your projects.
Thank you so much. My question is to Mira. You have indicated that you started a social enterprise. In what ways a social enterprise is different?
Thanks, Zain. I think I got your question. For me, this is my definition. I think that a social enterprise is a business that has specifically structured its operations in such a way that it is creating something that is mutually beneficial for the company and for the constituents of the company. So I'll give three examples. I'll give one example of what I don't think is a social enterprise, although again, my definition differs from society. But everybody promotes one specific shoe company that states, okay, if you buy one pair of shoes, we'll give away a pair of shoes to some poor country in Africa. That to me is not social entrepreneurship. That is just giving charity from your profit, from your bottom line, because you're not really doing anything differently in your operations of your business. You're just saying that I'm committing to donating some of my profit, which is still good. It's a charitable act, but it's not a social enterprise. To me, one example of a social enterprise is actually Jamshedji Tata, who, back when he was establishing milling and textile industries in India in the 1800s, saw how important it was that mothers working in the mills had good childcare. And so he created the idea of the creche at work, where you could come as a mother with your child, drop your child off in a safe place where they could be taken care of. And you, as the mother, could put your best effort into work because you knew that your child was being cared for. And so in that way, the employees of the mills were treated better and got something out of this arrangement. And they in turn put in their best effort and were more productive in the mills. So that to me is like a very clear idea of mutually beneficial. Ruyintan's, $500 work assistance, car assistance program is the same thing. He realized that for a lot of employees that are earning minimum wage, if you have a catastrophe, a car breakdown, or something that happens in your life, $500 can make all the difference if you're being able to continue working or having to take time off to figure out what you're going to do and how you're going to do this. And so creating this idea where no questions asked, if your car breaks down, I'm going to give you this $500 loan. It enabled his employees to have that comfort and to have a safety net. And that enabled them to get to work and boosted their attendance at his factory. And so he was able to get better efficiency in his factory, and his employees were able to get something that they needed that gave them the comfort to be able to continue working and put their best effort in and know that their employer cares about them, right? And the third example of what Tomato Joss is trying to do, right? We have structured a program for our farmers, our partner farmers, that, we provide them a loan with all of the inputs that they need to grow tomatoes on our fields. We give our fields out to them and we say, okay, you farm here, you farm here, you farm here, you farm there, right? Now, the farmers are benefiting because they have a much, much more organized farm in which to do their work. They have water coming all the way straight to them that's already priced into the loan. They have tractor services. They have somebody on hand who can answer questions if they have a problem with a pest. We benefit because a farmer on a half a hectare plot is actually able to take better care of his field than I, as somebody who owns 1,000-hectare farm, would be able to do. They can pay more attention to these small sizes of plots, and they can actually get higher yields than I would be able to if I was farming that same land commercially. So I'm getting more inputs from my factory, and I'm able to get farmers from 5 tons a hectare to 40 tons a hectare, and from $100 a season to $1,000 a season. So again, that's what I think of when I think about social enterprise, is creating operationally a structure that provides mutual benefit.
Thank you. Thank you, Farzeen, Zain, and Vispi. And now we are going to open the floor for comments and move into the dialogue phase in terms of in the context of this particular webinar. And I want to invite young people first to talk, to comment. Case, for example, Aditi, for example, Shavash, for example. These are some young people that I know have joined us for this particular session. So, Aditi, how about you starting? Hayes, how about you following? Go ahead, Aditi.
Thank you so much. Okay, for me, I want to ask this, in this like rigorous process of what the work you are doing for others, the work you are trying to do for yourself and others and for this world, how do you keep yourself so motivated for this? I know passion comes, but it's like it doesn't go a long way. It initiates the process. How do you keep yourself so much like motivated throughout the process?
Renton first, then Mira.
Well, in my case, what motivated me to give back to technical institutions like the IITs was very simple. I studied at a minimal price. Many of us on this webinar who went to IITs will vouch for that. Our tuition fees were like 200 rupees a year, and hostel fees were 100 rupees a year. And including the mess bill, the entire annual cost was 2,000 rupees a year for a 5-year education. It was 10,000 rupees, which even in those days was actually a minimal amount. And it was a world-class institution that allowed us to come to some of the top universities in the US. So if you don't give back to your alma mater, call it Guru Dakshina. That is probably the best way to describe it. And then the second part was, why am I so passionate about water? Whatever little money I made in my entrepreneurially oriented companies was, one of the products that we made was the returnable 3-gallon and 5-gallon water bottles. And in my time, it was a uniquely American industry, and we exported to over 60 different countries. So basically, I saw that in many countries in Africa and even in Asia, they basically used what is called as reverse osmosis to make pure water. So when I finally sold the company, I said, I am very passionate about doing something in the water area. And in India, there is a strong need to work in the area of water purification and water security. So that was some of the reasons why I got involved with that. And of course, health is another very important criteria, and primary education. So those were my reasons for selecting and giving back to the areas that I care about.
Mira?
Sure. So for me, Aditi, your thing about passion is so true, right? Everybody's well runs dry at some point, right? You have to be passionate to get into anything. And Ruyintan mentioned this as well, right? You have to care so deeply about it, because there are going to be days when you do not want to get out of bed, right? And where you just feel like, I don't know how I'm going to do this. And, so the passion does help a lot, right? Really, really feeling like you care about what it is that you're trying to do and that you deeply connect to that. But I think for me, and I mentioned this yesterday on our prep call, and I think it was Karishma that sort of echoed it back in this really nice phrasing that she said, you're almost like a catalyst for Ushta, right? I honestly do get energy from my team, right? When I'm feeling like, I don't know how we're going to do this. I don't know how I'm going to make payroll. I don't know, how I'm going to have this difficult conversation with a vendor, right? If my head of procurement comes in and says, hey, we got this, I'm here because I believe in what you're trying to do too. And I believe in what this company is trying to do. When I talk to the head of my smallholder program who says, you know what, this is so exciting. Like, I would rather be here than anywhere else. I don't want to work at an NGO because maybe I'll do that when I'm bored and when I'm old and I'm ready for a boring job. But right now, I want to be doing this. This is cutting edge for my country. And, I can't get this experience anywhere else. When I get that reflected back to me, and it's sometimes I feel like it's the passion that I've put out there, right? And I've been able to get it to catch hold in my teammates, and then they reflect it back to me so that when I'm down, they're pulling me up, right? And when they're down, I feel like I can pull them up. And so it sort of becomes this virtuous cycle. So that's really, really important, is being able to have a passion and ignite your team with that passion. And then also, I'm trying to learn how to do this, but self-care, right? Making sure I sleep enough at night. I have a really hard time falling asleep because my mind's always racing, but really making sure that I actually get the sleep that I need so I can wake up the next day and feel refreshed, making sure I'm drinking enough water. For me, exercise is really important for my mental health. So making sure that I'm building that into my day. If there are things that give you energy, trying to make sure that you don't abandon them into the throes of your work is really important.
Thank you. Case.
Yes. So this question is for Mr. Ruyintan. So at what age did you say goodbye to your job, and did you have any second thoughts?
I had a midlife crisis, I believe 1989, 88, where I told the president of our division to get lost in much stronger terms. So I was 40 years old, and it took me 1 year of reviewing what I need to get into. So I would say between the age of 40 to 42.
Thank you. Go ahead, Case.
I just want to say thank you.
Thank you for asking.
Now we are open and we haven't seen anything in the chat. So if anybody would like to unmute themselves or put their hands up, you're more than welcome to. Mira?
Thank you. I was intrigued by what Mira said when she was growing up in Massachusetts. And her parents took her to a Vedanta class. And I'm wondering, because in her last response, I could hear shades of that. When she was answering a question and said, when I'm down, the people around me bring me up. And when they are down, I can bring them up. And there I saw a connection with the idea, which is in the Vedanta, that we are all one huge human family. Not only a human family, but we are part of a global universe where everything, plants, animals, humans, insects, are all connected. So the question to Mira is, what happened there as a child? Did that get into your subconscious and your psyche that you're now able to express it so beautifully? And I want to end this question by saying thank you to both the participants for being so open and so being vulnerable and telling us where it worked, where it didn't work. And that takes a lot of courage. I really appreciated the idea of Mira saying, I want to build a different kind of company. Difference, to dare to be different, is leadership. And I applaud you for what you've done. So I look forward to your response, Mira.
Great, thanks, Baramanko. Definitely, I think, the Vedanta philosophies have seeped inside of me. I went to the Vedanta Center in Boston from when I was born until when I graduated high school every Sunday. And we had like a 1-week children's camp every summer as well. And I think the lessons from that really, permeated, and it always gave me, this idea of connectedness, and this idea, we would have all these songs, whatever, love is a circle, the more you give, the more you get. And that sort of also ties into Ruyintan's give to get, right? Give back to get happiness. I think that I'm always looking for those connections, and I'm always looking for a commonality between my experience and the experience of, the person who I'm speaking to. And definitely, I think that has been probably, filtered into my brain through osmosis from all that time. And even to the point where, for me, I don't see that much of a difference between the Zoroastrian principles and the Vedanta principles and the Christian principles. I really see them as all being paths to enlightenment, and choosing one of those paths, any one of those paths, and pursuing it with a full heart will, I feel, lead to fulfillment and lead to a good life. So I hope that answers the question.
Thank you.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Just a reminder, please fill in the chat, please fill in the form that has been put into the chat. This is they're going to be very helpful for us. Shyavash and then Harsh. Shyavash?
Thank you so much. I have a question from Mira. For the first step, how we can find our ways and how we can prepare for starting the social enterprise for our state, as who are continuing the education and want to participate in some social activities.
Great. Well, I think that I agree with Ruyintan that to a certain extent, academic excellence or some kind of, ability to apply your intelligent mind to solving a problem is really important. So even if you don't know that it's going to help you in your later life or when you find your social passion, taking the time to do well in the studies that you're doing, in the subjects that you care about, is really important. Having hard skills will help you in any endeavor that you choose, even if you don't necessarily have a skill in the specific area that you're passionate about. But having a hard skill, I think, is really important. And then I think it's about, if you're questioning where and how to, find the issue that you care about, then it's just about exposure, right? It's about going to as many different kinds of volunteer groups or, exposing yourself to so many things to see what ends up catching in your mind, right? You might not necessarily care about the charity events that your parents took you to when you were a kid, but maybe there's something else out there, right? So it's just about sort of casting that net, right? Ruyintan realized that he cared about water through one of the businesses that he started and ran successfully, right? I realized that I cared a lot about Nigeria and that I cared about economic development through working at a nonprofit that was in HIV, that I'm not doing anything related to that anymore. So I think that, you know, but I developed these skills, right, from the Clinton Foundation. I developed hard skills in Excel from BlackRock that I use every day in my job. So I think that those are sort of the things that I would advise you to do, right? Keep an open mind about where the passion is going to come from and do well in whatever it is that you're doing at the time.
Thank you so much, Mira.
Just a word about Shiavash. Shiavash is in Iran. He's going to get his PhD with us and go back to Iran and start a social enterprise to help Zoroastrian youth get higher education in Iran itself. And so that's his goal, that's his passion. And that's what Janet and I are going to help him do. Harsh?
Yeah, well, I'm so happy I'm here at this conference. Thank you, Farrokh, for organizing it, and whoever else has done it, Cyrus. I had come here to listen to the presentations of Ruyintan and Mira, but I got a very big bonus in Karishma's presentation. I'm just amazed how beautifully she explained the essence of Zoroastrianism. I'm so happy I got to learn that today. Just a quick comment on Mira. I mean, Mira, you are such an amazing young lady. What you're doing out there in Nigeria, a country which is besought with violence and crime, but there is a huge need. So my hat's off to you. I wish you all the good luck and less tears in future. I want to just mention one thing about Ruyintan. He is a man of a lot of action, but few words. He has not mentioned many of the things that he has been doing. And one thing that I personally know where he's been involved, he has been an informal but an important advisor, but also a funder for Competitiveness Mindset Institute, where he just made, as Karishma, you said, a calculated risk in donating fund without any record of activity by CMI, Competitiveness Mindset Institute. And with his continuing donation, CMI's program, Finding the Leader in You, which is to have young people inculcate ethical leadership and competitiveness, two key pillars missing in India. Indian youth has now, is now being taught in 100 institutes, including IIT Bombay, IIT Gandhinagar, BHU, but it wouldn't have been possible but for the faith, Ruyintan, you put into this program. And I'm not surprised that the World Zoroastrian Chamber of Commerce bestowed upon you the Social Entrepreneur of the Year. So I'm very pleased to be here today.
Thank you, Harsh. I am humbled by your compliments.
I too would like to build on what Harsh just said. I'm Nandini Tandon in San Francisco, and I've had the honor and privilege of working with Ron in the conference that we are organizing at BHU. And Ron has been such a firm supporter of innovation, entrepreneurship, skill development in the next generation and in women especially. And the few things that we admire among many of Ron is what he says he does, and also his support of women's health, investing in women's health as a venture capitalist and in life sciences. We have very few people who support women's health. So he's truly inspiring. And Ron, thank you for inviting me. I learned so much from you and Mira. And you're both very inspiring. And thank you for all that you all do. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
We'll freeze.
Yes, hello, good evening, everyone. I'm Hofresh. I am 22 years old and I'm from India. I am a psychology graduate from the University of Mumbai. And I have a question for both the speakers here. So, my question is that when you quit your jobs and decided to set out on your own, was there any point where y'all were just working as a one-man team? And how did you all find the right people who shared the same passion as you did? And what was the first step you took when you wanted to start your own, like own business or own, your way of helping people? What was the first step you took? The reason I'm asking this is because I have various ideas as well as a psychology student and someone who's also interested in various creative pursuits. I have a lot of ideas to help people in the community as well. But because I'm new to the field and I do not know exactly where I should start from, what's the first step I should take? So, what was the very first thing you did? And if you worked as a one man team, then what were the problems you faced and how did you go about it?
Let me take a stab at it. I first developed a business plan, which unfortunately was somewhat flawed because we thought that we will have the northeastern part of the US as our main client base to sell our water bottles. Turned out to be that the established companies had a big stranglehold on all of these customers. So we had to quickly improvise and innovate. So we came out with a patented design. For example, all the water bottles that you probably see are round. So we had a round bottom, but in the middle we had a hexagonal structure, and it transitioned to a round in the bottom and the top, and we put a hollow handle. The funny thing is we found a great deal of appeal to companies that were far away from the US. So very quickly, our hexagonal bottle that we shipped, we could put 19% more bottles in a 40-foot empty sea container. Because of the hexagonal packing, we had less void space. And as a result, Coca-Cola of Colombia, when they got into bottled water, picked our design. So design innovation is very important, but your original question was, how did I manage to do the one-man show? In order to gain client support, customer support, I used to rent the largest U-Haul that you could drive without having a commercial driver's license. And a guy who had almost got a PhD, I never finished my PhD, I used to drive this 24-footer loaded with empty bottles and take it to a bottler customer in East Orange. And just because he saw that there was an owner of a company coming to deliver bottles, he was thrilled. And we kept getting repeat orders, and he networked to other bottlers to buy from us. So very important to network. Number two, in your field of psychology, you should definitely network because there is a great deal of help needed in the area of mental health, particularly for women, many of them in postpartum one. I can go on and on and on because I know a lot about it. But those are some of the things I could give you some advice on.
Thank you so much.
So for me, I also started Tomato Joss with a business plan. One of the reasons I went back to business school was because I felt like I had this idea when I was in Nigeria, but I really wasn't sure how to take it from an idea into a reality. And so, when I was in business school, I took classes on entrepreneurship. I took classes on finance, on the areas that I felt like I was not strong, to try and boost my confidence. But I did write the business plan with three other people, with three friends of mine who all sort of helped as students. And then at the end of that time, one of the other students wanted to go forward with me. And I really didn't feel like I could do it by myself. I felt like I need somebody, you know, to the point that I said to, you know, Behram's question, right? I need somebody who I can encourage and then they can encourage me back. I felt like not confident enough to do it on my own and to just be this one-man show moving to Nigeria without really any clue what I was doing. And I chose the wrong partner. I chose a business partner and gave that person 50% equity in the business that I later had to find an amicable way to have exit the company, which also took about a year to do. And it was a very, very difficult time early on in the business to try and figure out how to sort of restructure the ownership and restructure the management, because I realized that, you know, I couldn't do it with that person, even though I also couldn't do it by myself. So, and this goes back to the whole idea of, you know what, like just start and try, and you might fail, and then you sort of figure out through that failure how you're going to do it again and how you're going to do it better. So I'm happy to talk offline with you more about sort of what that experience was like, and, you know, specifically if I think critically about like what it actually was that I wanted that other person to do for me and to be for me. I think that probably self-reflection would give some more answers out of that as well. But yeah, the short answer is I didn't do it alone, but I also didn't choose the right partner initially.
Thank you. The email addresses are on the screen. You may take them down. Karishma, and then Idil will end for us. Karishma, your comments, and then Idil.
Mine is more a question than a comment, if I may please, Farrokh. And that is to Ruyintan first and then Mira. Ruyintan, you talked about your parents. And my question, as you know, I'm a firm believer in collaboration. At home, when you started your company, I've seen my parents support me and others. I'd like to ask you about your home, about Auntie, and the support you received at home during these difficult times and how important that has been for you.
Well, Karishma, my parents obviously were 10,000 miles away. And other than moral support, they couldn't really help when I first started. But the real rock and the person who supported me through my wild dreams and ideas was my wife. She's a true entrepreneur in her own right. She started private practice in 1982 in an arcane field of medicine called neuromusculoskeletal disorders and physical medicine and rehab, and became highly successful. So when I started my company, she gave me full support, including allowing me to use almost actually a 7-figure amount because no bank would finance us. So she has always been my rock and support. We've been married a little over 50 years. And I think I get straight, highly critical advice when I need it. Sometimes it hurts, but that's the best kind that you could ever get.
So for me, oh, go ahead.
I was just saying super. It's very nice to hear that story. Yes, Mira, over to you.
Yeah, so for me, I mean, my parents definitely have been incredible cheerleaders for me in everything that I've ever done. You know, when I was on the rowing team, they used to come to my races every weekend, no matter what part of the country I was racing in. And, you know, they supported me, although they were initially kind of skeptical about me moving back to Nigeria for the second time when I decided I wanted to start this company. I remember my dad very, very clearly sitting at the dining table saying, "But you already lived in Nigeria once. Why do you want to go there and live there again?" You know, but having gotten over that and, you know, deciding that actually, okay, you know, let me do what I want to do and see if I can make this thing succeed. He and my mom have been incredible cheerleaders. My partner, Art, who's also my business partner, you know, who I found in 2014, 2015, has also been an incredible support for me. Just again, you know, being a sounding board, being a shoulder to cry on, being a cheerleader. My mom, you know, when I think at one point I had like probably $90,000 of debt between student loans and credit card debt. And, you know, my mom, and I wasn't taking a salary, and I'm living in this like converted chicken coop in a village in Nigeria, you know, and I'm just like, what am I doing? My mom was like, okay, I'm sending you $1,000 a month, which I can afford to do so that you can pay the minimum on your student loans. And I'm helping you to, we're going to find a credit card that can like hold all of your credit card debt at 0 interest for 12 months. So we can help figure out, how are you going to pay this down? And like, just actually like helping me with the, like, just to organize this stuff, because I was so overwhelmed and I was focusing on the business and like letting my personal finances blow up. And, she's like, let's just step in and figure out how to restructure this so that you have actually a way to get yourself out of this debt. Right. And, so those, and then my dad, frankly, I have to be very, very appreciative of him and honest that, my dad is also a very successful entrepreneur who sold his business in 2016 or 2017, a couple years into Tomato Joss. That also afforded me with the ability to get out of debt because he, got a lot of money through the sale of his company, and that enabled me to unbury myself. And, I wouldn't have been able to do that without the support of my parents, and I wouldn't be able to, work every day and fight all these battles without the support of my partner.
Thank you, Mira. The WZCC is a family like that. So over to Adel.
Hello, everyone. I hope I'm clear. You can hear me clearly? Yeah. Today's focus was to highlight the best of the best social entrepreneurs as part of the WZCC ZFN Spotlight Series. And boy, did we have a treat. Very fantastic presentations, very inspirational. I'm sure everyone, especially the young, got a lot out of it. And it also provided a lot of food for thought, which I've picked up from this talk, and I'll talk a little bit about it. So today, Ruyintan talked about empowering employees, compassion to his employees with the loan program, environmental consciousness, major support of social causes, and commented on his Zoroastrian DNA, which means principles of righteousness, honesty, transparency, integrity, respect to our environment, and finally giving back. As Ruyintan's case, 50% of his net worth to close the loop. Mira talked about work ethics, support of family, curiosity, empathy, and commitment to excellence. Her Zoroastrian DNA emphasizes kindness, stubbornness, what she said stubbornness, I'll call persistence, providing education and opportunities in the form of partnership with her farmer suppliers. She too empowers them to grow, resulting in the upliftment of the Nigerian farmer. So Ruyintan also talked about Andrew Carnegie's life's 3 stages: learning, creating wealth, and giving back. Ruyintan is in the 3rd stage, giving back stage, while Mira is in the 2nd stage of creating wealth. But what is common is that to succeed, they both had to practice ethical business criteria, which includes honesty, respect, caring, empathy, fairness, environmental stewardship, social citizenship, integrity, and abiding by the law. And B, create intellectual, economic, and social value to maximize the nexus. They could not just focus on the social end without the economic end, without the intellectual value which is needed. As such, by combining the business ethics and maximizing the nexus of intellectual, economic, and social value, they work, consciously or subconsciously towards sustainable development. So I'd like to comment a little bit on sustainable development, because that is what I really got out of today's talk. Thinking of ethics in terms of sustainability involves thinking of ethics in a strategic terms. Thus, thinking of employees, customers, stakeholders, and environment, that is people, planet, and prosperity in strategic terms. Therefore, I think sustainability could and should be raised to a status of a global ethic. And I think, though they didn't mention much about sustainability, there are perfect examples of it. So in conclusion, thank you, Ruyintan and Mira, for the excellent and inspirational presentation and valuable content, which has given us food for thought. Thank you, Farzin, Zian, Wispy, for your meaningful and challenging questions. Thank you, Yazdi, Percy, Karishma, Farrokh, for your coordination and stewardship to create order and synergy for today's super outcome. Thanks also to all of you for attending and helping to make it an interesting and meaningful session. Let's give all of you a round of applause. Before I leave, Farrokh, if you can give me a minute or two to just talk about a couple of a little unrelated items, I would appreciate that.
Certainly. Let us stop recording. And